Do I need to introduce Mellody Hobson? No. Show of hands. I know we're end of the day, people get a little tired. Please participate. Let's keep the energy up. Show of hands. How many people think it is a good idea to take advice in investing or what we're here for from someone who's only had one job? Is that a good idea or a bad idea? Put your hand up. No, I think everybody knows the secret. Melly, you've only had one job. Tell everybody, one job. I thought we'd get people to sucker them in there, but I guess not.
You become an expert when you have one job. So there's a line that says, an expert is someone who knows more and more about less and less. And I love that idea because if you needed brain surgery, you would not go to your general practitioner, right? You go to the expert. So in having one job, you get better at what you do over time. You accumulate a great deal of knowledge. You get information and data points that allow you to learn and grow. And ultimately, I think it makes you better at what you do.
Now, we try to be timely, and we talked with Chris Christie earlier. We opened, and it was about the election. Here we are on election day, and what's going on, New York mayor. I'm looking at your investment history. The two biggest holdings, both Jim Dolan companies, speaking of New York.
Yes, at Ariel, yeah.
So you've been in on the Jim Dolan, and if I look at them, it
goes back a long way.
It goes back a long way.
Insanity is when we first bought. And the price overrun on the Garden is when we first bought Madison Square Garden pre-split, because there have been a lot of iterations of the business.
Now, Jim has said forever we're undervalued. You love that. What did you see? This is entertainment. It was the building. It's Madison Square Garden Entertainment. That's the facilities. And Sphere.
Right. At the time, those were all together.
Yep.
Sphere was not yet even thought of. But we saw sports as a media play. And we saw people running for the exits at the time because as I was saying, Madison Square Garden was doing the retrofit, and they were grossly over in what they had estimated they would spend.
Of course they were.
Grossly, just as the Sphere was. Yep. Sphere had 5 price increases. They were $1 billion over. And so when investors saw that, they got more and more discouraged. Then they had the basketball lockout around the same time. And so that had people discouraged, just like Alex was saying with baseball. When people start to get worried about the lockout, they're worried about revenues. All of that happened at once, and we said, this will not continue. We went to actually visit Madison Square Garden, and we saw those skyboxes, which everyone was very, very negative on because they were behind the seats. And they're saying, that's not even a skybox. And we saw it, and we said, this is actually
it's like
really
a living
good.
room behind.
Correct,
you could then
but
come
it's
out
well
for the game.
Done.
Yep.
It's well done. And we also said, you cannot build Madison Square Garden in New York today. You can't get that city block all the way around and build that facility. That is the moat. So we look at that moat and we say, okay, it can't be rebuilt. If I could own something that can't be rebuilt in the middle of New York City with that kind of brand, would we want to own it? And we said yes. We went in when it was undervalued. And then the subsequent spins, because you had the network, you had entertainment, you had sports. The entertainment became the Sphere. The Sphere was another one that was just ground down by Wall Street. They were so discouraged. No one believed it could work. We went to visit the 8th size model of it in California to see what it looked like, and it was blow away, just the 8th size model. And then when you got the facts, like you can stand the Statue of Liberty inside of the Sphere straight up. When you're sitting in a seat, sound comes directly to you, so you don't have the crazy sound that leaves you deaf, which means when a band is playing or they're holding a concert, they can direct sound to a seat and translate just what you can hear, where the person next to you hears a different language. These things had never been done before. And we looked at the technology, and we looked at the experience. We said, instant icon. We literally wrote that, and that's what it has been. And once they brought in U2, people were like, wait a minute, U2's going to play? And then suddenly people realized this was something special, and the Aronofsky movie was huge. And now, of course, it's the Wizard of Oz.
The dirty little secret is all the money's made on the daily shows. It's not so much the big concerts. But I don't want to be dismissive. Why did so many people...
But the secret is the idea of replicating.
Give me more secret. Yeah, what's the secret?
It's the replication, which is what we said. You amortize those costs because you have to build that special entertainment. It's, you've got to build it in the round. It's not the normal screen. So you have to, the actual content has to be created for the sphere. So the goal is to ultimately have other spheres.
And in the Middle East, there's one coming. So if we look to replicate, does
and
the company
smaller
have,
ones may come too.
Yeah, do they have an advantage in that they've operated, they've done? Good luck trying to catch up when you're talking about the model elsewhere?
Well, the thing about it is when you rebuild it, if they're going to, you don't have the same cost, the same experimentation, all of the things they had to learn from on that first building, you sort of have hardwired in the next one. And they have this capital light model. So the idea is that they will have others pay for the building and then license the content and all of those things. So it's very attractive from our perspective. It's John Rogers, who he's the portfolio manager. I just ride sidecar on this in terms of learning about it. It has been one of his favorite stocks. He's been pounding the table, and he was so obsessed with me seeing the sphere. He was like, I need you to go and see it. I was flying west, and he said, you've got to go in and see it. And I have to say, I was a little skeptical. I had seen the 8-site model, but I went in, when I watched U2, there was a moment they started singing. I burst into tears. It was overwhelming. Actually, your senses get overwhelmed by the experience, and I'd never had that happen to me at a concert.
So that is predominantly a concert venue. Let me ask you this.
Yes, the Sphere is.
Yeah. In the sports domain, I have contended for some time that I have yet to see somebody differentiate themselves significantly inside an arena. What's your take on what the advantage would be if I was blindfolded and I said, okay, I'm in this venue, I know because this is different, this is different, this is different.
In a sports arena?
In a sports arena.
I think that depending on the venue you visited, we've seen stadiums be built these days that are magnificent, inside and out. I mean, I think that people talk about, I have not been there, the Cowboy Stadium. I was at SoFi recently, and that screen that they have. There are these features now that are coming that are mostly technological that I think create a really, really, really great experience.
I'm just not sure if it's differentiated. But anyway, if I say sports business.
Well, I think there's a difference between an old stadium and a new stadium.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, we may love,
By the way, a new stadium becomes an old stadium after like 5 years.
Yeah, but, there's charm to the Cubs, and Wrigley. So, that's very different than the experience you would have at SoFi.
So if I say sports business, what does that mean to you?
Media.
That's interesting. It's the number one revenue driver. But is it real estate, finance,
I start
all
with
the other?
Media,
Okay,
and
tell me
yes,
more.
the
So what do you
answer
look
is
for then? Now the investor. I want the investor, Mellody. What do you look for?
So we look for first of all, with the media contracts, you have a revenue stream that you can model out. And you can see today into the future based upon those contracts being signed, and you know what they are. You also look at the fact that it's must-see TV. Whatever it is, whatever the sport, people want to see it in real time. And then also the arena experiences are fantastic. They've become amazing experiences, even if you're in the nosebleed seats. So we think media first. Media and entertainment is how we first think about it. The real estate component can be extremely valuable, oftentimes even undervalued. People weren't that interested in the stadiums before because they thought of them as big capital expenditures, to the point that I made about Madison Square Garden. But now I think they see real estate very differently. There's a huge difference between owning shares of a sports business with stadium rights and without them. You want the stadium rights because of the ancillary revenues that come from concerts and all the other things that can happen inside of that stadium. Clearly the sponsorships that you get to participate in, maybe the ancillary businesses around it. And I would say also the other thing that's changed with sports, especially in the last decade, is those live, work, play environments that are around stadiums. I remember growing up in Chicago where the Wrigley neighborhood would complain about having Wrigley right there and the traffic and the light pollution and the noise and all of those things. And that was a big deal. Now, again, I'm going to use SoFi because I was just there. You go to SoFi and there are housing and restaurants and everything built around it, and people want to be there. And that foot traffic that comes from those concerts and from those games create a great environment for businesses to thrive and grow.
If I'm looking at media and U.S. sport, I think of the NFL. Now, there's a personal investment in the Broncos. And yet you sort of had to be talked into that.
Yeah.
That was Casey Wasserman and Jeffrey Katzenberg had to talk you into investing in the Denver Broncos. I would have thought as a media-centric investor, you'd have been knocking on Rob Walton and Greg Penner's door saying, can I get in?
Well, here's the thing. I have to let you first help you understand, which is that historically, my investments have been in Ariel, in our funds, and in the things that we do. And I was not one to go and be a direct investor. I had made some really quiet investments in sports.
Chicago White Sox and told no one. Why was that, by the way?
And swore all the owners to secrecy.
Yeah, why? And by the way, I can't believe you kept it. We hate secrecy. But why? Why couldn't anybody know that you invested in the White Sox?
Because I didn't want to confuse the Ariel investor that if they heard Chicago White Sox and Mellody, could they make the distinction between the firm and me personally? And I thought it would confuse them. And so I wanted it just to be quiet. I didn't want to talk. You know, we're quiet about what we do in my family. And so the White Sox was something I wanted to do because Jerry was someone that I had so much respect for. And I had been seeing, again, through not only at Ariel did we own Madison Square Garden Sports, we also owned Manchester United. And I had been seeing, you know, what had been happening in sports. So we'd made tiny little quiet investments in the WNBA league itself.
Oh, we're gonna
and I remember Kathy saying, can we use your name? And I said, no, you cannot use my name. But then the Broncos, this was a great story. The Broncos were for sale. Greg Penner and the Penner Walton Group said, would you be interested? They had someone call me, interestingly from JP Morgan, where I'm on the board. And I was like, no. And then Casey Wasserman and Jeffrey Katzenberg, we were at the same event. Casey knew about this, and Jeffrey knew about it. Greg and I sat on the board of Quibi together with Jeffrey, which is how we knew each other. And they said, we need to sit you down. And so they sat me down, and they said, you are the perfect kind of sports owner, Mellody. You should do this. And I was like, I can't. I mean, a football team. I love sports, but why would I do this? And Casey was the one, he just went in really hard, and he said, you know, you are the person who should do this. And there were some symbolic aspects to this because at the time I was the first Black woman, certainly, to be a principal owner of a team. And not principal, but an owner of the team. And so there was, it had to be public. That was the condition. I couldn't do it quietly. So then I was really like, ooh, I'm not sure I want to do it. But I had so much respect for the Waltons and Greg Penner from having worked with them. And I said, if I was ever going to be involved with people, again, back to Alex's point, these are the people I want to be involved in. There's no scandal. They live a low-key life. They're more like us in terms of how they show up. I was not buying into the team for Super Bowl tickets. And I just thought that they would be a good match. So then when we start to see the math, it was so compelling. You know, as I like to say, math has no opinion.
I wrote that down as one of your sayings.
Compelling. Math has no opinion. And then that's when I went to my husband, George, and even though I'm the owner in that situation, I said, this is a good idea. You know, he's always loved football, although he's more of the college football guy, USC. But we quickly, you know, came to a decision really fast. And it was fun. You know, it's been a really, really fun investment. And I remember the first time I talked to Rob, I had not known him or met him. And we bonded over all the things that we all love. And it just became a great, it's been a great, first of all, great investment.
Any cycling? He told me he recently started using an e-bike. He thought he was cheating.
Oh, I don't know about the e-bike. I know he loves cars and my husband loves cars. So Rob has one of George's favorite cars of all time, which is a birdcage Maserati. And I said, George, he has 2 birdcage Maseratis. And George said to me, he's like, ask him if they'll throw one in with the purchase.
And?
No. That was a hard no.
You mentioned Kathy Engelbert, and you mentioned the WNBA. In preparation for this, I watched one of your interviews not long ago. Kathy is the perfect person at the right time. I'm not sure if Nafisa Collier would agree. Your thoughts, one, on Kathy as commissioner, communicator, negotiator.
So this is what I would say. One, I am not wading into that question at all. There is no upside for me to do that. And I don't believe in being a person who lobs in views when you're not in the situation. I've been in too many boardrooms and in too many really, really hard negotiations for where I know people don't all know all the facts, and you can make presumptions, and I'm not taking either side, and I mean that. I think I'm more like what Alex said. I want to see the women make more money because I want women to make more money. That's just full stop. But I also know that these are hard jobs. And so I respect the fact that there's a lot to actually try to get done. But I'm hoping it comes out the right way. I'm hoping there's no work stoppage. I don't have a W team. I hope to one day. But I do think that what we're seeing right now is pretty once in a generation in terms of this inflection point with women's sports, with the W, with the whole, area of women's sports. And so therefore, I'm rooting for all of them, if that is possible to believe. I want them all to win. I want Kathy to win, and I certainly want the players to feel like they are getting what they deserve.
Does it bother you, as a supporter of women, of female athletes, that they are saying of an entity that you publicly, like this is something, there was no hiding it, you are a part owner of the WNBA, an equity stakeholder. Does it bother you that they say we're not seen, we're not appreciated?
What I would say is I will change the language and say I want them to be appreciated, and I want them to feel that way. And I'm a tiny, tiny owner. That's not to get off the hook on this, but I would say that, so I'm not someone who's coming in the cap table with, weight and size. But what I'd say is I'd like it to be a situation where I think it's always better when you have people who work with you, for you, alongside of you, like you, want to be there and feel appreciated. That leads to the best possible outcomes.
From the math has no opinion, from an investment standpoint, where does that WNBA stake rank? You hit it before
it's
that.
It's very small.
It's
very small in my life. But where does it rank in terms of what I think is possible? I think we're going to see these teams be amazing successes over the next decade, which is why I started a women's sports fund. I call women's sports the small caps of sports. I talked about being at this once in a generation inflection point in sports, not women's sports. Sports will be elevated by more participation of women across the board. And I'm looking at this through the eyes of my 12-year-old daughter. My 12-year-old daughter, Everest, I give this example at every panel that I'm on. When she sees two men or two women married, she just calls it marriage. She doesn't call it gay marriage. She's just going to call it sports, not women's sports. And I think that'll be true of 12-year-old boys as well. And I think that is the paradigm that we are seeing shift in real time. Not to mention, the women are going to draft off of what happened in men's sports, which really started around the zeros. When you look at how the valuations on teams changed, it was in the early zeros, and it was directly correlated to media rights. Those media rights started to skyrocket, which had a lot of it was driven by TiVo. The mere fact that you could actually record television, and appointment television changed, and no one wants to watch sports, as my husband calls it, fresh frozen. You want to watch it fresh. So as a result of that made those media rights be so significant, and obviously the Star is becoming so significant as well. That's already happened, and so women, you will see, I think, the slope of the line in terms of growth be actually steeper.
A couple of stats. From our own WNBA valuations from Kurt Badenhausen, best in the business. Valkyries are the first $500 million team in women's sports. And by the way, you bought into the WNBA. The enterprise value of the entire league was?
I don't remember what it was at the time. Maybe.
About 100 million?
Yeah.
That. Every WNBA team is up more than 100% over the past year.
Yeah, off of obviously smaller bases, but that's the thing about small cap stocks. They may trade at higher multiples, but they're growing faster. The E is lower, the PE part of it, the E is lower, but the growth rates are fast, and we're seeing that in real time right now. The Valkyries, I live in San Francisco part-time. I cannot believe how they've marketed that team. I wake up at the crack of dawn, and on the news, before the news started, every single day, the Valkyries had 5 minutes every day. during the news at the end of the day. They had 5 minutes, and it became just routine to hear about them, to see them, which is why they sold out every game at Chase Center, over 18,000 seats, and they've been something that we've never seen before. Now, I think that will become a form of the norm, and I'm glad to see them having done so well, but I think they played off of, again, the Warriors playbook, and ultimately were able to leverage that with extremely fast growth. I mean, it was their inaugural season, and they've gone to more or less, probably tied with the Liberty, more or less the top of the heap.
And you're also now involved in the NWSL, having purchased the expansion team in Denver. I'm guessing deal sourcing is not an issue for you.
No.
Give me a sense of what the incoming looks like. There's house cat and there's alley cat. I'm sensing you can be a house cat.
But I'm not.
But that's the most dangerous.
I'm not. I put it this way, there are hunters and gatherers. I've hunted my whole life, but I had to.
Right. But now it's coming to you.
What is it? What's the
incoming?
The fish are jumping in the boat. That's
right.
what Jason Wright would say. Jason Wright is is our partner on Project Level, which is our fund. And he ran the Commanders, as many people know. But he's like, I've never seen anything like this. We have so much incoming because they know we'll be well-resourced in terms of the fund that we're raising of scale for women's sports. It'll be the largest dedicated women's sports fund. And then they also know, I said we bring three things. We're going to bring scale so that we can be a significant member of the cap table. We're going to bring operational expertise, which you get with Jason, who ran the Commanders and saw everything from having to get a stadium approved to rename a team to turnover management, all sorts of things, and did it very, very well, and obviously even sell the team. And then lastly, we bring discernment. Having been in the investment field for so long, discerning around the people and discerning around the opportunity.
How is fundraising going? Everyone's out there all over the globe trying to raise money. It's not, some do it better than others. It's not easy.
Well, so we have our first close supposedly next week. It might move a few days. And I think we're feeling very good about where we're going to be. We're in the sprint phase. So this is literally like I'm having night sweats over my fund. I'm waking up in the middle of the night. I'm thinking who else I can call. But I think we're going to come out with a good number that looks very, very strong and shows the interest that we have in that is out there in women's sports. And then we're just very, very focused on the next asset that we will acquire. We warehouse 2 deals before even closing our fund. We warehouse League One Volleyball, which is, a remarkable organization.
I love League One because I think of it as a youth sports play, the club model.
24,000 girls play in their clubs in 93 locations in 28 states. But what most people don't know, 490,000 girls play volleyball in high school in America today, which is more than boys play baseball or soccer. So we love that business, and the league is like the cherry on top. And they just sold the LA team, as you know, to Alex Ohanian for $20 million. $20 million. So think about that relative to Angel City or Bay City or some of those things that happened just a few years ago, which were going for $2 million. They sold a volleyball team for $20 million. So we think that there's a real opportunity there. And we love junior sports because even in a tough economic time, you don't take your kid out of their sports.
I say there are 2 things that folks will spend irrationally on: their kids and their pets.
Yeah.
I don't know how to marry pets in sport, but I know how to marry kids in sport because I'm a sucker. I'm paying tons of youth hockey for you.
Yeah,
Geez.
and so we warehouse League One Volleyball and we warehouse the Denver Summit. In the Denver Summit, we've talked about this fact that, we've come out of the gate there very, very strong. Our stadium has already been approved. Our temporary stadium is being worked on right now. I mean, that's going to be a great story in sports. We're so excited about it.
Let me bring a tech perspective into it because we talk about tech in sports, but a term. I would say women's sports is in the chasm. That's that early believer who will do anything they can to propel, and then here comes the majority. Do you think that's where we are?
I think not early in the talent. The talent has been there. The talent is extraordinary. And what is probably most heartening to me is that talent is now being recognized more broadly than it has ever been recognized before. Sure, there have been the one-offs, but there are so many great women athletes. And that's actually one of the reasons that this has become such a calling for me personally. It's not just that there's a commercial aspect to this that will financially do extremely well for our investors, but it's the idea that we can elevate women on the field, on the court, on the pitch, and in elevating women, we elevate society. 70%, 70, of women in the C-suite today played high school or college sports. So we know those leaders are made on the field, and we think that by elevating women's sports in all versions, girls watching it, boys watching it, girls playing, all of those things, that we take our whole society to another level, which is something that is happening. It's not an American thing. It's an international phenomenon.
And I want to close with some members of your advisory board. St. Marshall, she was with the Mavs.
Yeah.
But Stella McCartney, Queen Latifah, who coached the Knicks in the movie Eddie, so I know that's where you get
She was also a two-time basketball champion in New Jersey.
Did not know that. Shame on me as a New Jersey resident.
Stella McCartney
I did not know.
designed the Olympic uniforms for the UK Olympics in 12 and 16.
Ralph Lauren's got the U.S. locked up for a while. It's tough. But do you view it as fashion,
And
music,
Lewis.
art, sport? Do you view it all as the same ecosystem?
Lewis Hamilton. Yeah, I do. I do view it all in the same ecosystem, except I would say that I don't want to diminish in any way the athlete. Like, let's not get them lost in this message. They are the content. We need to understand that. This is nothing without those players. And so we need to really understand and value that and understand how they enrich our lives. I cannot imagine our lives without sport. And watching it, I mean, my husband and I joke, we're like, during the Olympics, we watch everything. And I say to myself, why are we watching curling at 2 a.m? We get so excited about the competition. And it truly is, as many people have said, and we saw this with the World Series, there's nothing left where we're united without this polarization. There's no gender bias where you're not sitting next to another person. If you're rooting for the same team, or racial differences or religion differences, country, but if you're rooting for the same team, you are on the same team. And my theory, as a world, we need to be more on the same team.
We're a tad over, but I still want to finish with this. On this stage 1 or 2 years ago, I don't remember, David Blitzer said there isn't a single one of his sports investments that would have passed the Blackstone Tactical Committee.
Correct.
What about Ariel and your sports investments, and what does that say?
We are not an all-at-all-cost investors, hoping it works out, catching a wave. We do the work. We are penciling out every investment, and it has to make sense. We don't want to be in a money-losing venture for long periods of time. We want to see a path to profitability pretty early. And so we're being very rigorous about our criteria. We have criteria around the cities that we're choosing, the type of structure that we're putting together. We're being rigorous about all of that because over the long term, we think we can be and we can still win.
Mellody, thank you, as always.
Thank you. Thanks.